Joining me tonight, Joy Reid, managing editor of thegrio.com, and former Admiral Joe Sestak, and former congressman from Pennsylvania in the United States Navy for 30 years, also worked in naval intelligence. Great to have both of you with us tonight. Joy, you first. Did we gain any ground today? Any new information?
You know what, Ed? That spectacle that you just showed, I need to get my cell phone out. That was embarrassing. These guys got up there and absolutely embarrassed themselves. Think about this for a second. We had a breach of a compound of a U.S. consulate office, a consulate in Libya, where we had 4 Americans die. And the only thing that they want to know is whether or not it started with a protest. That's the most important piece of information. That's what the American people have got to know in order to get to the bottom of this. What about the question of whether Congress provided adequate funding for security at that compound for our people there? What about what potential intelligence might have been removed from there? Because we do know that the Marines there to guard, those consulates are there to guard intelligence. Aren't there more substantive questions that they could have asked? They're obsessed with this idea of what Susan Rice said on the Sunday shows, and it's absurd. And by the way, the most ridiculous, almost comical line that was used at the hearings today was Rand Paul saying, "Had I been president." Give me a break. Is he getting his information from InfoWars, Breitbart? That's their sources of news and intelligence, and that's what they're using to question our Secretary of State? It's absurd.
Admiral, what was your takeaway today from the entire ordeal on Capitol Hill? How did Secretary Clinton do in her testimony?
Well, I think Secretary Clinton was exactly as she was a few days after the incident occurred. She stood up and said, "I am responsible." She stood up and said today, look, the State Department wasn't perfect, and I am responsible for that. But she also rightly turned the mirror towards Congress and said, look, when you start finger-pointing, look in the mirror yourself. And as Joy just said, since 2010, they cut the infrastructure funding to defend our consulates and our embassies overseas by $300 million. Look, I think that accountability and having investigations is absolutely needed, as you said, Ed, to get to transparency and find out the facts so it doesn't happen again. This shouldn't be about partisanship.
Admiral, what about this constantly going back to Susan Rice, constantly not being satisfied with the first answers that came out, and constantly harping on talking points, which the CIA said that they provided? You were in Intel. How does this unfold?
Well, when I worked at the White House and intelligence would come up to the president, I was always taken that there never seemed to be a one-armed intelligence officer. They always seemed to say on the one hand, but on the other hand. Look, intelligence, getting it quickly from out there back here is very tough. And usually, as Admiral Crowell, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, once said, the first word is always wrong. And what we don't want to have come out of this is that in the next incident, our intelligence community doesn't give its best first assessment because it's even too cautious, because it's turned into a partisan football like has happened on this. Get the facts, deal with them once you know the facts, and then fix it for the next time.
And Admiral, what was your response, your reaction when you saw Rand Paul say what he said?
So out of line. Secretary Clinton, who I happen to have the honor of knowing when I'm working a little bit with in the White House and a little bit when I was in Congress, I have to tell you, her stewardship of the State Department has been impressive. I think for him to sit back like that and make such a claim when he has no concept about what rolls into the State Department is out of line.
Joy, this was an example of reaction on Fox News. I want to play this. Here it is.
I was waiting for one of those senators. In fact, I put it up on Facebook. Fail. Corker. Fail. Rubio. Fail. Down the line, they had her. They had her with her own words, and they, for some reason, went back to the ARB.
What is the bloodlust for Hillary Clinton?
I think what you're seeing, Ed, is these are the first sort of shots being fired in the 2016 campaign. And I think a lot of Republicans thought this was their opportunity to publicly take down Hillary Clinton ahead of a run that she hasn't even announced. And I think the idea is that Hillary Clinton is a politically potentially potent force coming from the Democratic Party. And this was an opportunity, frankly, for a lot of backbenchers whose names are not known, like Ron Johnson, people who are not stars on the Senate stage, to get out there, be on television, and make a name for themselves. I think clearly that's what Rand Paul was doing. I think Ron Johnson and others were trying to raise their profile at her expense.
And Admiral, we may never know the motivation for the attack. Is that a fair statement?
We may never know exactly what it was. Look, we've gotten much closer to exactly what occurred, and Secretary Clinton said what is most important of all. We'll take these lessons and try to ensure it doesn't happen again. And second, we will get those who we identify who did this crime.
All right. Joy Reid, Joe Sestak, great to have both of you with us tonight. Thanks so much. Remember to answer